4K dash cameras. We are going to compare 4 Sony Starvis 2 dash cameras. All 4 of these units use the front IMX678 Sony Starvis 2 image sensor, the Viofo A139 Pro versus the Thinkware U3000 versus the Vantrue N4 Pro versus the 70mm A810. You're going to see daytime, nighttime, weather driving, license plate pickup, tunnel test, parking mode recordings, including motion detection, time lapse, and impact detection, and some rear camera footage. We will go over current draw in milliamps and watts and low battery protection. This was not an easy task. All of this product was installed into my Kia Soul EV. Unfortunately, it broke down mid-test, so we had to take everything out and install all of these 4 units into the rental car, which is a 2021 Mazda CX-5. So strap yourself in, make sure you turn your video settings to 4K video resolution. Let's go. Dash cam resolution. All 4 of these 4K dash cameras use a 4K 8 megapixel Sony Starvis 2 image sensor. Now, when we look at the rear camera, both the Viofo A139 Pro and Vantrue N4 Pro both sport a rear 1080p Sony Starvis image sensor, and the Thinkware U3000 uses a rear 2K 1440p Sony Starvis image sensor. And last but not least, the 70mm A810 is just using a rear 1080p image sensor. Now, if we want to take a look at the recording capabilities of these units, the Viofo A139 Pro, Vantrue N4 Pro, and the Thinkware U3000 all will record in 4K 30 frames per second, while the 70mm A810 only will record at 25 frames per second. Now, if we drop down to 2K, the Viofo A139 Pro and Thinkware U3000 both have capability of recording at 60 frames per second and 30 frames per second, while the Vantrue N4 Pro has capability of recording at 30 frames per second. The 70mm A810 has no capability of recording in 2K resolution. Now, 1080p, the Vantrue N4 Pro will record at 30 frames per second, and the 70mm A810 will record at the option of 60 or 30 frames per second. Now, looking at the rear cameras, the 2K camera rear on the Thinkware U3000 will record at 30 frames per second, while the other remaining 3 will all record in 1080p at 30 frames per second. Viewing angle. The Viofo A139 Pro runs a front 140 degree, rear 170 degree viewing angle. The Vantrue N4 Pro runs a front 155 degree and a rear 165, and the Thinkware U3000 has a front 152, rear 128 degree, and last but not least, the 70mm A810 runs a front and rear 150 degree wide viewing angle. SD card capacity. The Vantrue N4 Pro and Viofo A139 Pro will support up to a 512GB micro SD card, while the 70mm A810 and the Thinkware U3000 will only support up to a 256GB micro SD card. Wi-Fi capability. Both the Vantrue N4 Pro, Viofo A139 Pro, and Thinkware U3000 will all support 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi, while the 70mm A810 HDR only supports a 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi. Why is this important? It's because if you're running 5 GHz Wi-Fi, when you go to download a video directly to your phone, you can actually download the video 3 to 4 times quicker than the 2 GHz Wi-Fi option. GPS information. All of these units actually have GPS information built in. It allows you to actually embed the speed and location of where you're traveling directly into the video. It also has the capability to turn this off, just in case you maybe have a heavy foot. Impact detection while parked. We're going to be covering 3 dash cameras: the Thinkware U3000, the 70mm A810, and the Vantrue N4 Pro. We're going to throw the basketball at the windshield and see how quick they react to turn on after impact. The Thinkware U3000 turns on 1 second after impact. So if someone backs into you in a parking lot, this is going to wake up 1 second after impact and start recording, which is quite awesome. That's amazingly efficient, and the low current draw it has in this mode is also really good. We'll be covering current draw on another video coming up. The 70mm A810 takes 2 seconds to record after impact, which is actually quite amazing that it actually did that in 2 seconds after impact. The Vantrue N4 Pro, as you can see, we throw the basketball at it. We're now waiting for the impact detection to turn on, and the impact detection is going to take 13 seconds again. So this dash camera is taking 12 to 13 seconds on average to wake up after impact, which makes it pretty easy for someone to back into your car and drive away. So we're going to test the Thinkware U3000 again. We waited 15 minutes. We wanted to make sure there was consistency, and boom, impact 1 second after impact again. The Thinkware U3000 was completely consistent. 70mm A810, 2 seconds after impact again. And we're going directly to the Vantrue N4 Pro for a second test of the third camera. And as we can see, we're going to be coming up here, and it's going to take about 13 seconds again before it wakes up and starts recording, which means there's a good chance it's not going to record what's needed. So we took the Vantrue N4 Pro and found that there is a quick start mode in their impact detection. 1, Steamboat 2, Steamboat 3, Steamboat 4, Steamboat 5, Steamboat 6, Steamboat. So it takes 6 seconds in order for it to actually load. So it's quicker than the 13 seconds, but still, in my opinion, it's not good enough. I hope you enjoyed our test with collision detection. Now, we are going to have some upcoming videos where we actually are going to show you the amount of current draw, because we actually don't know the amount of current draw the 70mm A810 is drawing while parked. Because when we look at what the Thinkware U3000 and U1000 draw in this mode, they typically draw about 10 milliamps of current, which is extremely low. It'll last for days. But when we look at how the Thinkware F200 Pro does, which is a 1080p camera, for instance, that one draws about 120 milliamps of current, which is 12 times the amount of current. So we actually don't know the amount of current draw the 70mm A810 is going to draw. So that's going to be a very big factor, because if it draws 120 or 150 milliamps, it's actually not going to last long in this collision detection mode. So I'm going to be blown away to see exactly how that one reacts. I love testing all of our products that we support here at Safe Drive Solutions compared to some of our competitors' products to see what's going on. But as far as I'm concerned, when we're looking at this, the Vantrue N4 Pro does not cut it in collision detection. You need this to be reliable. So maybe Vantrue will get this stuff figured out. Time-lapse recording. This actually is used in order to preserve space on the memory card. The Viofo dash camera gives you the option of 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10 frames per second. The 70mm only uses 1 frame per second. When we go into the Thinkware dash camera, in the time-lapse parking mode, it records footage at 2 frames per second, enabling the dash camera to continuously record long periods of parking surveillance without increasing power consumption. And the Vantrue finally records at the option of 1, 5, 10, or 15 frames per second. How do dash cams record while parked? So we actually took 4 4K Sony Starvis 2 dash cameras to see how they record with motion detection at night. So we took the 70mm A810 brand new 4K HDR, the Thinkware U3000, Viofo A139 Pro, and the Vantrue N4 Pro. And in this video coming up, you're going to see how 3 out of the 4 work. The reason why I say 3 out of the 4 is because the 70mm A810 uses AI motion detection. So it didn't deem the motion detection video that it was recording as being important. So it actually just didn't save it at all. So if you are worried about someone being suspicious or something happening in your area and you wanted to catch that person, well, let's just put it this way. My first set of tests are basically showing that you do not want to invest in this dash cam because it's not going to record if you're using the motion detection feature. Anyways, we're going to show you the video here. Pay attention. I think you're going to be blown away at who actually wins. Let's go. I know for me, I would probably choose the Thinkware U3000. And honestly, I'm actually very surprised because I felt that with the Viofo and the Vantrue both using HDR, I thought for sure those would have absolutely destroyed the U3000. But honestly, for some weird reason, when you're nighttime driving, the Thinkware U3000 just doesn't really work as well as the Viofo or Vantrue with the HDR. But when we're looking in parking mode and it uses its Super Night Vision 4.0, you can actually make out my face somewhat, and you can actually see my shirt and make out like the words on my shirt if you really slow it down and go in there. But like, I don't know, like for me, I probably would get the Thinkware U3000 after seeing this. Like, this really blew me away. I know a few people were pushing me into doing this test. But anyways, hopefully this education is helping you out. The more and more choices we keep giving you, and actually this does prove my original suggestion from quite a while ago, is that the Thinkware U3000 is a parking mode first dash camera. So if you're looking for the best parking mode, that's what you want, is a Thinkware U3000. Parking mode cable. Both the Viofo and Vantrue parking mode cables need to be hooked up to power, ground, and ignition. Now, the main difference between these two is the low battery protection cutoff. On the cable for Vantrue, it only has settings of 11.6 and 12 volts for low battery protection, while the Viofo has 11.8, 12, 12.2, and 12.4 volts cutoff. Let's talk about the parking mode cable with the Thinkware U3000. So basically, you have this little connection right here, and this plugs right in to the top of the U3000. Now the low battery protection, which you can see right here on the screen, gives you lots of options all the way from like 11.6 to like 13.2 volts. Now typically most vehicles I'm going to recommend setting it on 12 volts or higher. Now what ends up happening is when you actually buy the U3000, you get one of these in the box and you're like, oh my god, it's an OBD2 cable. And what happens is people go out of their way to actually purchase a hardwire cable. So they go and spend all this extra money, like an extra $30 or $40, buying a Thinkware hardwire cable. Well, I covered this on one of my other videos, but I want to make sure to cover it right here. So here you go. Here's the OBD2 cable that comes in the box. And if you want to actually hardwire it, this is what I do. I cut it. It's gone. The OBD2 cable. See right here? It's gone. And see here? There's still fuse holders. I pull it off, and you have your power, ground, and ignition wires. Just simple like that. And that's all you need to do to turn the OBD2 cable that comes in the box with the U3000 into a hardwire cable. Doesn't mean that every OBD2 cable is going to work like this, okay? I'm being very specific. This is the cable that comes in the U3000 2-channel box. This is the OBD2 cable. And then you can hook this up to ignition, constant power, and ground in order to actually hook up. And then you can set it for your low battery protection in order for it to work. So that's the proper way to do it. Let's talk about the hardwire cable for the 70mm A810. So as you can see here, basically you have the 70mm hardwire cable. This actually has your power, ground, and ignition cables, which I've wired in like 3 times now, so it's getting shorter. And then you have the USB-C that plugs into it. Now realistically, when we were doing this, I was trying to figure out what the low battery protection threshold was. And there's a lot of bad information on the internet. Like there's even a bunch of stuff saying that this cable has 3 selector voltage switches, which it actually doesn't have any voltage settings at all, period. To the point where I went through their whole website, couldn't even find a manual or anything for it. So I did what you're supposed to do. Open the box up for the hardwire cable, and I read the manual. And the manual says, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but I'm going to try zooming in. But as you can see right up here, low battery protection, 11.8 volts. So there's no way to set it. It's 100% default set at 11.8 volts. And that's directly with the hardwire cable that they recommend. It's called the UP03, because I know supposedly there is a UP04 cable as well. I'm not a 70mm dealer. I'm just going by the information I have. Anyways, we did test it. It does shut off directly when it hits 11.8 volts. So it does work correctly according to our testing. And we're going to go forward with showing you the low battery protection test next. The low battery protection. So what we basically are going to do is we're going to turn it down to 11.9 volts as both dash cameras are set to 12 volt low battery protection. And what's going to end up happening is it's going to take about 1.5 minutes for the Viofo to actually shut down, while the Vantrue takes 5 minutes to shut down from the low battery protection. We're doing the low battery protection test of the Thinkware U3000. As you can see, it's at 12.5 volts, and we're turning it right down to 11.9. Now, we didn't wait long enough for the low battery protection kicked in, so we ended up getting a little jumped ahead of ourselves and changed to 11.8. but at 11.9 volts, it actually does shut off after about 1.5 to 2 minutes being below the set voltage for your low battery protection. So we have it set at 12.5 volts and we're testing the low battery protection. And as you can see on the 70Mi A810, we're going to go and put it right down to 11.8 volts. And instantaneously it shuts off because that's what the low battery protection is set for. So that's how you have it. As soon as it gets down to 11.8 volts, dash camera will shut off to protect the battery of your car. So let's talk current draw of parking mode. We're going to start off with what the total current draw of this dash camera is while you're driving around. So it's drawing 450 milliamps of current, or 5.6 watts, depending on how you want to look at it. That's not even half an amp of current. Now let's go into the parking mode features. The radar parking mode, and this is what really blows me away. The radar parking mode is drawing 10 milliamps of current on our test bench. Okay, 0.1 watts. Motion detection is drawing 286 milliamps, or 3.5 watts. Time lapse is drawing 251 milliamps, or 3.1 watts. And energy saving mode is drawing 3 milliamps, or I'm just saying 0.1 watts because it's so low it won't even register. Anyways, let's talk current draw of the Viofo A139 Pro. So for regular current draw, while it's operating and you're driving your vehicle all day, it's going to draw approximately 498 milliamps, or 6.7 watts of current. Now, when we go into parking mode and we look at like time lapse, for instance, it's going to draw a little bit less at 389 milliamps and 4.8 watts of current. Obviously, it's preserving a little bit, you know. And then we're going to auto event detection. Auto event detection, which is motion and impact, is 439 milliamps and 5.4 watts of current. And then when we go look at low bitrate recording, really low bitrate recording is saving storage space, but it's still drawing the same current as auto event detection at 439 milliamps and 5.4 watts. Let's go over current draw of the 70Mi A810. So when looking at it continuously recording with the front and rear camera, we're looking at about 451 milliamps and 5.5 watts. Fast forward into time lapse, and you're getting on average between 250 and 270 milliamps. Approximately, we're talking 3.1 watts. Now, going into collision detection, we're at about 112 milliamps, or 1.4 watts. And then we look at motion detection, we're back up to about 340 milliamps and 4.2 watts. Let's go over current draw of the Vantrue N4 Pro. So while continuously recording in 2-channel mode, we're at approximately 714 milliamps and 8.9 watts. This is by far the highest current draw out of all 4 dash cameras. Now we're going to look at the collision detection, and this is actually the new collision detection, which takes about 6 seconds in order to actually for an impact to register into collision detection mode, and we're looking at 121 milliamps and 1.5 watts. Now we're going to fast forward over to motion detection, and motion detection we're at 626 milliamps and 7.8 watts. And now we're going to go directly into low bitrate recording. A low bitrate recording is at 495 milliamps and 6.1 watts. And then final time-lapse mode, 559 milliamps and 6.9 watts. We've got the Viofo A139 Pro, Vantrue N4 Pro, Thinkware U3000, and the 70Mi A810. all 4K Sony Starvis 2 dash cameras. We're going to be showing you night recordings. We're going to start with 2 tunnel tests, and then we're going to follow that with the blackout test, late night driving, and then we're going to end it with chasing license plates. Enjoy. This is the blackout test. There will be lots more comparison video coming of these 4 4K dash cameras. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Pros and cons. Let's start with the Vantrue N4 Pro. Pros, LCD screen. It has a magnetic mount that allows you to disconnect it easily while leaving the mount on the windshield. It will record 30 frames per second all the way into 3-channel mode. HDR, high dynamic range for front, rear, and interior cameras. Cons. Parking mode needs some updates. Collision detection takes anywhere from 6 to 12 seconds to start recording after impact. Parking recording duration should be added into settings. File list organization needs to make it easier to find video files. No HDR high dynamic range auto timer. The audio quality is poor. The Viofo A139 Pro. Pros. It has the HDR Auto timer. Parking mode is a step up on Vantrue and 70mm. Parking recording duration. And if you don't know what this is, this allows you to set certain time limits for how long your parking recording will last. This makes it easier. So if you're someone who just runs into meetings on a frequent basis and all you want to do is have like 1 hour coverage, guess what? You can actually set it for that on the Viofo. You cannot do that on the 70mm or Vantrue. Parking mode cable has more voltage cutoff settings. Will support 60 frames per second in 2K. Great audio quality. The CPL filter is included in the box. File list organization via app keeps improving. You can now select videos individually between front, rear, and interior, similar to how Thinkware is. So Viofo has been improving their app. Also, this dash camera can be used in 3-channel mode. And it has the thinnest rear camera cable out of all 4 of these dash cameras, making it easier to run from the front to the rear. Cons. No LCD screen. You need to disconnect all cables to remove the dash camera from the vehicle. If you use this unit in 3-channel mode, it will only support up to 24 frames per second. High dynamic range HDR is only available on the front camera. There is no energy saving mode / impact only mode for parking on this dash camera, and firmware updates must be done via the desktop computer. Let's move on to the 70mm. Pros. It actually has a 2-second collision detection mode, which is pretty cool. It has good front video quality, and you can actually have HDR working on the front and rear camera. Cons. The front camera only records at 25 frames per second when using it in 4K resolution. The rear camera is low grade. It was the lowest video quality out of all the dash cameras we tested. Parking mode, they need to add a timer, which I just talked about earlier. Parking mode needs more options for low battery protection. The cable only has 11.8 volt cutoff, so you can't actually set anything else. There's also no time, right? Like we talked about, the parking mode needs a timer. It is going to run until it hits 11.8 volts, period. So to me, there needs to be some huge upgrades to getting parking mode up to snuff. The motion detection did not work at all. I mean, we showed that in the video earlier. I tried it multiple times, and no matter what, the motion detection didn't trigger for some reason. So it doesn't make any sense to me, but I guess it just didn't deem me a threat, the AI motion detection that they're using. Current draw needs to be lowered to compete with Thinkware. Like we measured, if you didn't see that part of the video, it was about 112 milliamps / gigawatts or whatever watts Chuck wants to know about for the people who want to know watts. Anyways, 112 milliamps as compared to 10 milliamps that the Thinkware does, right? So if they want to compete with the caliber of Thinkware, they're going to need to find a way to get that to a way lower current draw. And this number one thing that I really did not like is you have to create an account just to log in and use the Wi-Fi app. I don't like that. I just want to use the app. I don't want to have to create an account to use your app when I've already bought your product. Thinkware U3000. Pros. 2K rear camera. Has cloud features. The radar parking mode front and rear. It's the only dash camera I know of that's doing it. Voice notifications of incidents while parked. So if there was if there was something that happened while you were parked and you get back in your vehicle, it will tell you there were 2 incidents while you were away. Low current draw while parked. Out of all 4 of these units, this has the lowest current draw while parked. Best parking mode by far out of all the units. Cons. No high dynamic range. It's kind of where I think we're really missed it on this. The night vision needs a step up. And if they would have had high dynamic range, I think they really would have brought it. And some people do say it talks too much and they don't like it. Now, not to turn that con into a pro, but you do have control now in the new U3000 where you can actually change how loud it speaks on a lot of the different notifications. So that is an improvement, but at the same time, a lot of people don't like how much it talks. My final thoughts on these 4 dash cameras, and I'm just going to call it what it is. The best parking mode by far is the Thinkware U3000, which I've said on multiple videos, and I'm still going 100% all out with it. I will tell you this, I think the worst parking mode out of these 4 units is the Vantrue N4 Pro. The second best is the Viofo A139 Pro, and the third is the 70mm A810. Now, where I feel Vantrue and 70mm, which I've talked about multiple times, is they have very limited settings when it comes to parking mode. They're just not really, they need to up their game. And this might be this might be very simple things for them to possibly do, but I really hope they do, because I think the majority of customers, they get their battery beaten up because now it's just going to stay on until it hits 11.8 or 12 volts or whatever the setting is on that parking mode cable. You can't actually set a timer. And I always tell my customers, you can set a timer to have a little bit more consistency. Now, when it comes to best overall video quality, I don't know. I think no matter what I say, it's going to be controversial. I'm just going to, you know what I mean? If I told you it was the Viofo, I'm going to have, oh, what? He's just favoring Viofo. If I told you it was Thinkware, you'd be like, hell no. There's no way Thinkware is the best. But that's the truth. The Thinkware just isn't the best overall, right? They're the best parking mode by far. I think they do really well during the day, but when it comes down to night, they drop the ball, right? But when we look at the 70mm, which is, a brand new unit, I'm actually, it did pretty good. I was actually pretty surprised that it did, as good as it actually did. And I think there were some very positive signs. Unfortunately, their rear camera really didn't do too well. I really don't like their cable management. Like, it plugs in and it sticks out the side quite a bit on the 70mm. I don't think it looks good. If you look at like the Vantrue, the Viofo, and the Thinkware, all of them have the cables on the top, so it's very nice for like cable management. And I'm talking about this like from an installer point of view, also from like what I see from what my customers want. They really don't want to see those cables. And the 70mm, you really have to have the ideal installation situation in order for those cables to look good. It's really not going to look good on a consistent basis. So, I don't know. I could see a lot of people just not picking it just because how the cables look coming out of the side of the unit. Like, they're pretty big. and kind of gaudy. But either way, it has the LCD screen, has a lot of cool things, but the 25 frames per second is definitely holding it back, and that rear camera is just really low quality. You know, everybody else is using a Sony Starvis rear camera, and 70mi didn't. And that's why it is the lowest price out of all four of these units. So, I mean, I'm going to say that you are getting what you pay for, and you have to kind of look at that. And as you go up the chain, you know, things keep changing. But I don't know, everybody has to make their own mind up on what they feel is the best out of all these dash cameras. All I want to do is present the information to you. We've given you a lot of video content. There's lots of things you go back to. Hopefully you're viewing it all in 4K and you can make a great decision for what you want. We chose to support Thinkware and Viofo, and we're going to continue supporting them. And part of me of why we get these other products that we don't even sell, because I think some people might think it's crazy. Like, why would you put Vantrue and 70mi on your channel? You're probably going to drive sales to some of your competitors' products. But, well, yeah, probably some people will buy it from as a result of this video being played. But I don't think there's a problem with that. At the same time, we are being educated on how the Vantrue works. We're being educated on how the 70mi works. And I can actually utilize that information to be better knowledgeable at selling our products and explaining how our products work better than the competitors' products. Well, not everybody is doing that. They're all focused on, I need to tell you that this is the best because somebody's paying me money and I have affiliate links in order to sell you that. Well, I'm not really worried about that. I mean, we're running a business here. I understand that. But at the same time, I want to make sure to educate you and show you what these dash cameras have to offer. And if you decide that the 70mi is the best for you and you're good with paying that price and that's going to solve your problem of recording while driving, well, guess what? Feel free to get that unit. That's completely up to you. So anyways, if you do feel like supporting us, I'm Ben from Safe Drive Solutions. Check us out, safedrivesolutions.com. And if you're looking to get it installed, we also actively install in Greater Vancouver and area. And anyways, thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers.